Retirement. That's what we're all aiming at, right? But exactly what does that mean? It conjures up visions of endless days of golf, drinks with little umbrellas in them on a tropical beach, feet up, reading a book. Is that what it's all about? I don't think so. Life would get pretty dull after a while without anything meaningful to do, don't you think? I'm Jacquie and I'm on a mission to discover exactly what life is like beyond retirement. Join me while I chat with people who've already done it, who've retired to something rather than from something. Let's find out together exactly what's waiting for us when we say goodbye to that 9 to 5. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond Retirement. I'm your host, Jacquie Doucette. Today I'm joined by Michael Kay, who's a certified life coach. He's the host of the podcast Chapter X, and he's the author of numerous books, including one that was just released in February called How to Craft Your Chapter X, a guide to high-performing men to discover meaning and joy in retirement. He's based in New Jersey, and he was a financial professional for over 25 years before turning his attention to the non-financial aspects of retirement. He's been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Psychology Today, and now he's hitting the big leagues with Beyond Retirement. Thanks for joining me today, Michael.
It is my honor, Jacquie, to be here and just to have a chance to just talk to another professional about, retirement and what you're seeing out there and how we can make a difference in the lives of people.
I think that's a noble idea. Hopefully we'll change somebody's life today.
That would be awesome.
So your life changed along the way. You went from, being a financial advisor to being a life coach. What was the spark for that big change?
Well, I'm gonna back you up a couple of steps, just because I didn't burden you with the full story. So I actually started out as heading towards a career as a musician, and when I decided I wasn't going to be continue a professional career, I decided what any musician would do, and that is I became a CPA. And I spent around almost 10 years as an accountant and as a CPA with various firms here in New Jersey. And after that amount of time, I decided I really got tired of looking backwards, because accounting is all about what happened last quarter, last month, last quarter, last year. And it just lost its luster. And I wound up joining a friend of mine who had a financial services firm, and he wanted me to start a financial planning practice. And his firm was mostly around insurance and investments and things like that, of which I knew almost nothing about. It wasn't very long till I discovered that I'm really awful at selling stuff. So I decided to kind of break off, create my own firm. And little by little, through, I will say, accidents, fate, whatever, I shifted from selling stuff to creating a firm that was a multi-advisor firm with advisors in various areas of the country, fee only, not on a retainer basis, not selling stuff at all. I wound up transitioning ownership 4 years ago to my younger partner, Jeremy, who was brilliant, and we were very much aligned. We worked very hard on creating this transition. He was actually started out, I was teaching tax at NYU at their CFP program, and wound up meeting him there. And he came to see me one day and was interested in maybe opening his own firm. And I said, that's ridiculous. Come work with me. And we did. And so 4 years ago, I handed the keys over. And as I was transitioning, and let me step back a half a step. As a financial life planner, so much of our work was around asking questions that centered around trying to understand people's motivations. And the way to understand that was by understanding their history. So for example, our money history dictates how we look at money. Is it a weapon? Is it a tool? Is it a way of helping other people? Is it a way of control? So understanding people's money history, understanding their motivations, and helping them make good decisions around their money decisions, and around how they were going to use their money, accumulate their money. Why do this instead of that? What will allow you to put your head on the pillow at night, and how do you make those decisions? So as a financial life planner, so much of our questions was dealing with this. Let's look forward. So for example, a client would come to me and say, can I retire? And my question would be, well, what does that mean to you? Oh, well, I want to travel. Well, what does that mean? You can take the bus to Bear Mountain, or you can take the Queen Mary around the world. They're both travel, but they have a different price tag. What are you going to do on a daily basis or week? What's going to keep you engaged, active? I had one client who came in and all he wanted to do was retire. He was done. He was a television producer for a well-known morning talk show. And he came to the point where he was done. And all he wanted to do was retire. And I said, well, until you have an idea of what you want your life to look like, you can't retire, because how can I tell you if you have enough? Enough for what? And so what I realized through hundreds and hundreds of conversations, also maybe thousands of conversations is probably closer to reality, was that, when I would talk to men, especially, they had no idea what their next chapter looked like. When you say, well, what are you going to do when you retire? I'm going to play golf. Oh, really? 7 days a week?
8 hours a day.
Yeah, 8 hours a day, 52 weeks a year, forever, for the next 30 years, that's it. And really what it meant was that they hadn't had the time, they hadn't taken the time to really dig deeper as to what might, and I like and that word's important, is what might be meaningful, what might be interesting, what might be fun. So as I was heading towards the transition, I decided to take a course as a life coach so that I could not talk about money, because been there, done that. I don't talk about money. I don't on my podcast, I do not do financial shows. But I do talk about the fact that unless you have your financial life straightened out, the next part is impossible. So it is absolutely the first step, is to make sure you understand your numbers, make sure that you understand what your net worth, what your safe spending corridor is, all these things that are super, super important before you go into the next. So becoming a life coach was a way of helping people. And I created this community called Chapter X, aimed at helping men specifically. Because what I found, and I've gotten criticized by women like crazy for not including them in this little party, but what I have found, generally speaking, and I'm going to put the word generally speaking underlined in bold exclamation points, is that women, by and large, especially of this age group of baby boomers, are a lot better aligned, balanced, and ready for this transition, whereas men are not. And I also felt very strongly that I don't feel that I have, what's the right word? I can't speak from a woman's point of view. I'm not a woman. And I think it would be disingenuous for me to stand in that place to tell a woman something that I can say things in general terms, but in terms of their experience, because it's different by and large, generally speaking. So so that was my motivation in creating Chapter X and the podcast. And I write 3 blog pieces a week, and I do a monthly Zoom meeting for whoever wants to jump on. And I have 3 rules. One is we don't talk politics, we don't talk sports, and I don't care what they're drinking. So we'll only talk about real stuff.
That sounds good. I was thinking while you were saying all of this about it being called Chapter X and only for men. Maybe you should have called it Chapter Y, since it's the Y chromosome that the men have.
That's true. But Chapter X, really, the whole idea of X came from my 8th grade algebra class that I found myself, right, everything was to solve for X. And I hated algebra with such a intense passion that, but it's always stuck with me, is solve for X. So when you come out of your life in your career and you say, okay, well, what now is, okay, we've got to solve for X. So that's where it came from, as silly as that is.
It makes a lot of sense, actually. So what does that X actually represent to people, to your clients, to the people that you talk to? What kind of things does X mean?
Yeah, X is what gets you out of bed in the morning. What are the aspects of life that you are curious about? What are the things that provide meaning and purpose to you as an individual? How you define meaning, how you define purpose. And I think, because so many men are raised with the idea that their only reason that they're put on this earth is to work and to be successful, that they have forgotten what it means to play, what it means to have fun, what it means to not necessarily be competitive in every aspect of your life. You don't have to crawl over anybody in retirement. There's no ladder to climb. But this is where you get to create the sandbox you want to play in and play and experiment. When we're young, before we have this, before we are, laser focused towards this career, we were curious. We explored. We went into the woods and turned over rocks and walked through, streams and examined things and tried different things. But we've lost that because we've been told that our only purpose is to, be successful, get to the top of the ladder. Whether you're a doctor, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a CPA, whether you're a business owner, an executive, focus on that point, and that's it. And what I'm trying to do is break those barriers down, break those ideas down that we don't need it anymore. Okay, it was important, I guess, during our lifetime. I was one of the people that, it's like when I achieved my CPA license, and it was a very arduous ordeal. I looked at it and said, okay, that's good. When I got my CFP certificate, okay, that was good. But to me, it wasn't important. It wasn't who I am. So we have to, I try and get people to look at who they are beyond their job title. Ask that question, who are you when you're no longer your job? What is underneath the veneer that we've built up and this protective shell that we've created around our ego and our idea of who we are and our power. And because at the end of the day, we're all going to die. Okay. And I know people who I know, as sure as I'm sitting here, they are going to leave their offices horizontal because they cannot even imagine doing anything other than getting up every day, going to the office and working X number of ridiculous hours.
I was going to say that when I was getting ready to retire, I was talking to people and they were looking at me. I was in the military and they look at me and go, "You're going to retire. Why are you going to retire? I'm never going to retire. My job's my life." And I'm kind of looking at them going, that's really sad.
Yeah,
I'm really happy that you like your job, but there's more to your life than that. And you really need to find it.
yeah, it's so true. And, I do a little volunteer work, and I visit this elderly guy who's in an assisted living situation. And when I walk through this place and I see these people who are they're really in their ending chapters, and it's like they have no life purpose, and it's devastatingly sad. So it's and when I'm with this guy and I'm trying to get him to go, you need to exercise more, you need to move around more, you need to interact with other people more, you need, instead of sitting in your apartment with the TV on, and that's not living. That's just waiting to die. And I've heard stories from men in the Chapter X community who've told me a neighbor who retired, who was a executive, very high level executive. He retired. All he does sits on the couch and watches CNN. Yeah, and it's like, wow, exactly. And I offer, and I said to him, would he be willing to, to have a conversation, meet me for coffee or whatever? And he said, no, that's it. And I find that tragic because there's so much he could do. There's so much he could give.
Do you think it's a matter of having kind of shut off a piece of your brain while you're working and focused on your career? You've got kind of a tunnel vision going on, and once that door closes, they've forgotten that there were other doors that could be opened.
Yeah,
it's just a matter of taking the time to open those doors.
I absolutely think that's true. And the fact that, depression is so rampant among seniors and men especially, because all they can think about is what they did. I remember going to a social event last fall, and most of the people were no longer working. And and I don't know these people all that well. And I'm kind of being the bee and flitting around to the different, and all I'm hearing these conversations, these war stories. And I had no interest in any of that because I don't care who they were. I want to know who they're becoming. And, I've had these conversations with people, and I can see how with some focus and some effort that, and that's what I tried to do in my book, and How to Craft Your Chapter X, is to take people through the experience of kind of reclaiming their past. Because the fact is, we've been through in our lives transitions dozens, if not hundreds of times in our lifetime, right? We, from the time that we're a baby in the crate, in the crib, going, and we turned over for the first time. That was a transition from crawling to walking, from walking to running, from nonverbal to verbal, to, preschool to kindergarten, from kindergarten to, the end of elementary school and college and all these other things, marriage, divorce, children, jobs. We've been through so many transitions of going from not knowing to knowing. And the thing that's the most important aspect of that is the curiosity and the recognition of, yeah, it's not comfortable. Transitions are generally not comfortable. And as I say to my friends and my community and my clients, no one ever died from being uncomfortable. You're just uncomfortable. But just think, and one of the exercises I ask people to do is recall your first day of work after your professional school, your college, whatever, wherever you went into the workplace, not as a student, not a part-time job, but your full-time. What was it like for you? Go back and record it, write it, and as I sat and did the exercises myself, and I could recall my first day as an accountant, and I had to be at the office at 9 o'clock, and I was up at 4 a.m. and I was showered by 4:20, and I was dressed by 4:45, and I sat at the table going, oh my God, I've got all these hours and I'm sweating and I'm nervous. And and I remember sitting in the parking lot, just watching my watch, as to when I should go in and walk. And I can recall the anxiety of sitting there waiting for someone to let me in, and the questions. And, so it's important to recall, where have I been? We have all the tools we need. We've grown them from the time of our childhood. Now we just need to apply those tools to this chapter.
It's funny you say that, because I was going through that in my mind. My very first day as a pharmacist, it's like scared out of my wits. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And it seems that people forget that retirement is just like having a new job. It's just, this is the new day.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember, like, okay, I've got my accounting degree and I'm going into work for this accounting firm, and I don't know a damn thing.
Yep. and then suddenly you did.
Yeah. Yeah. And that recognition of, everyone started at the same place.
But nobody likes to be the beginner. No one wants to feel like they don't know anything. And that's a really strong, substantial kind of fear of having people, potentially laugh at you because you're doing it wrong. But how do you convince people that there's no wrong way to do retirement other than the sit on the sofa and listen to CNN all day?
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the ways to do it is to remind them that they've done it before. They've done it hundreds of times before. Whether when you had your first promotion, right? You went back to non-knowing.
Yep.
What was required of you, and each step of the way. So we've always had these things. And what have we learned? We've learned how to communicate with each other. We've learned how to learn, right? We've learned how to deal with our fears and anxieties. We've learned a whole raft of skills that we needed to get to from where we started to where we ended up in our career. So we need to reclaim that same beginner's mind to be able to say, this is just a new chapter of learning and experiencing. But we can take away the pressure of the financial pressure. We can take away the peer pressure. We can take away the ego out of it, because it's just you. And maybe, and you and your family, or whoever is in, whatever comprises of your family. And it's really important to be able to say, okay, they're going to be, I'll use the word failure. There's going to be failure. There's going to be things that you try that you don't like. As I said earlier, I was a classically trained trumpet player growing up. And, when I was 18, 19 years old, when I decided I was not going to pursue a professional career, I put the horn in the case and closed it for 50 years. And I mean, when I tell you literally, I was studying with a a teacher who broke me to tears every week. And I became a pretty good player. And when I was 19 years old, a friend of mine played a recording for me of a jazz trumpet player who happened to be a protege of Dizzy Gillespie. I don't know if you're a jazz person, and he was the same age as I. And I heard his recording. I said, I'm wasting my time because I will never be this good. I don't care how much I study. I will never be this level of skills. And that's when I put the horn in the case. And 50 years later, I was having a conversation, and I had, and in between time, I had met him, this trumpet player, who actually threatened to kick my butt if I didn't go back, and because I told the story on a radio show, but I was having a conversation with a friend who was really a world class and world famous musician and educator, and he said to me, he goes, why don't you just play again and just have fun with it? And I'm like, fun? Fun? There was no fun involved. I loved playing, but this was every fiber of my being growing up. And I thought about what he said, and I said, okay. And I started playing again, and I started taking lessons again, and I started playing with a local adult big band and having a ball. But I had to change the mindset. I had to change the whole cast of the self, you stink, you're not good enough, get better, you have to be able to look at yourself honestly and understand, where am I today? And I wasn't in the same place now that I was when I was 19 years old. So I could sit down and play and enjoy playing with a bunch of adults. But I also made the decision that while I'm having a good time playing, if I should stop having fun, I'm going to stop. So it's really that kind of understanding of yourself and saying, what are my boundaries here? What's the shell that I'm going to live with here? And that is, I want to be curious. I want to enjoy. I want to learn. I want to do things that bring me joy. And if it's not joyful, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I was going to ask, I know you said we've all got the tools that we need to move on in our life. We've all learned skills. We've learned lessons. Are there some things, and you've said now that there are there some things that we need to maybe unlearn in order to successfully retire?
Yes. I think we have to unlearn our identity. We have to unlearn the ego aspect of ourselves. We have to let go of things that have no place in our world at this time. And we have to be critical enough in our thinking to look at our stories, our beliefs, and ask ourselves, do we still need this? And if we don't, we need to reject it, even if it flies in the face of decades and decades of our lives. It's like, okay, it was useful then. It's not useful now. It doesn't fit into, so let's say someone who was in the corporate world and their job was to, they started, and they climbed up the ladder and climbed over their colleagues and whatever to reach whatever level of vice president or CEO or whatever their title wound up being. Well, that level of having to crawl over other people is no longer necessary. We don't need that. We don't need to compete on that level. And I'll go to the gym and see these people out on the pickleball court, looking like they want to kill someone, on the other side of and I'm like, that doesn't look like fun to me. It's like it's so serious. Like, oh, if I don't win, oh my, like what? Okay, so if you don't win, then
Tomorrow
what?
won't happen.
Right, exactly. And it's like, let's put things into perspective. And that is, we only have a certain amount of time on this earth, in this iteration of ourselves. We know that many people are, going to go through different stages of retirement. And we used to talk about this, in my life as a financial life planner, is, it's like you retire, you're in this, what they call the go-go stage. And then they have the slow go stage, and they have the no-go stage. And when you hit that no-go stage, you're pretty much, in that assisted living type of situation, where you really are dependent. But during the go-go stage, what do you want to use that energy, that vitality, those things where you can make a difference in the world? And when I say difference in the world, I'm not talking about curing world hunger. I am talking about anything that brings goodness into the world, that brings something positive to another person, to your neighbor, to a friend, to a loved one, to whoever's life you touch. And those things, I believe, have a big impact on the world as a whole, because it changes people's state. I told the story. Actually, I wrote about it in one of my blogs. Is I've been doing Pilates, which I did years ago, and I stopped doing it, and I started doing it again. And so I'm taking lessons from the Pilates instructor, and we're out actually in this area where other people are, and so it's not an enclosed space. And I'm sitting and I'm working hard, and I'm sweating, and I'm grunting and whatever. And this guy comes over to me, and he leans over, he goes, "You are doing a great job." He goes, "Wow." He goes, "It's really impressive." I didn't know this guy from a hole in the wall. And I could probably, and I didn't have my glasses on, so I really couldn't see him very well. And he lifted my day.
Yeah.
Right. And it cost him nothing. Right. But it changed my day, in such a positive way. And, he turned around, walked away. I've never seen him again. I probably wouldn't recognize him because, as I said, I don't have my glasses on, but, those are small things that make a difference.
It's like being a Walmart greeter. Everybody laughs at them, but hey, you walk in and somebody smiles at you and says, "Good morning." That's great.
Yeah. I was, one of the guys in the Chapter X community, decided, he belongs to this gym, and they were looking for someone to come in early in the morning and hand out towels when people come in. And he said, "I'd love to do that." He's a very social guy. He gets paid minimum wage. He was a high-powered executive, and he was having the time of his life, because he's an early riser. It's not about the money. He says, "I'd do it for nothing." He goes, and you go, all these people that I know, and hi, and chit chat, and blah, 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 and he goes, it's fabulous. It's just, it's just a small example of how you can make a difference in the world by just doing things that are joyful. And that's one of the reasons why I put "and joy" in the book title, because without joy in what you do, why do it?
Yeah.
Right? If it's a should, if it's out of guilt or obligation, why do it?
As I figured, the first word that you should take out of your vocabulary after you retire is "should."
Yeah.
That's, I say, you should take out. But
yeah.
It should be gone, because you don't need it.
You don't
either
need it.
Do it or don't do it.
Right. And ask yourself,
Yoda.
Right. Exactly. Ask yourself those important questions. Is this meaningful in my life? Right? Is this important? Is this something that brings me joy? Is this something that aligns with my values? And that's one of the things I dig in very deeply in the book, is this whole idea of this exploration of, what do I really care about? Because if all your life, your professional life, has been aimed at making money, that's not what you care about. Right? It's now that you're not making money, or that's not part of a significant part of your life. Now it's like, okay, well, what can I do? How can I use my skills, my abilities, my knowledge, my experience in a way that's positive, in a way that makes a difference, in a way that helps others, and in a way that aligns with my values? I'm super fortunate in that I have, my daughter lives locally, and with two of my granddaughters. Unfortunately, my son lives in Chicago with my third granddaughter, because evidently nobody in my family knows how to make boys, and which is fine, because I adore my three granddaughters. They are the heaven and earth to me. And it gives me so much joy doing something as simple as, my daughter says, can you bring her to school? The one in preschool, can you bring her to school tomorrow? I would love to. And we have the best time. We're together for a half an hour, and we're talking and we're laughing, and I'm being silly and she's being silly, and I get a hug and I get a kiss, and I spent a half hour with someone who means the world to me.
Fills you up with joy, just like it should.
Completely.
Yep. So let's talk a little bit about your book.
Okay.
And I know I took a look. I got an advance copy, and I did take a look at it. And you've got all kinds of different chapters. You've got some exercises to do. You've got chapters on, gerontology and psychology and couples. How do you want your readers to go through it? Do you think that they need to go through chapter by chapter, or can they bounce back and forth?
Well, the last several chapters, I was blessed enough to have a gerontologist write a chapter, who's also part of the Chapter X community, Dr. David Bernstein, a psychologist, an exercise specialist, and a woman who specializes in she's a social worker and therapist who does a lot of work with couples. And I asked them to donate a chapter. And the four of them wrote chapters, and that's towards the back of the book. And a reader can, read those anytime they want. The rest of it is progressive, I believe. I try to lay it out where you start in the beginning and you go through the exercises, because I feel it's like peeling an onion, of getting down to the core. There are things that I want people to experience as they read. And these exercises are, and this is based on my coaching practice, and I do a workshop and things like that, is to bring people through an experience of their own life that they can sit and think about and work through. And it's meant to be a process at their own timing. And what I said before each of the exercises, make sure you have time. Make sure you have clarity. Make sure don't rush through this, and don't do it on the computer. Do it freehand. Because you're going to go deeper that way, and take all the time you need. And then after you've done each exercise, think about them. Go back, and if something else occurs to you, amend it or add to it. I want it to be a roadmap of building skills and self-knowledge, so that people can then look at their life in this chapter in a different way, in a way that's more informed. You're not thinking how you thought in your work life. You're erasing some of that stuff you don't need anymore. Clarifying, what do I value? Why do I value that? What's so important? What are one of the exercises I have people do, and this is towards the end, is I ask them to write a eulogy that would come from a spouse, a child, a grandchild, a friend, a colleague from work. What do you want them to say about you? And I feel like that's an important exercise from the standpoint of, if you know what you want people to say about you, now go live it, right? Now you know with great clarity who you need to be to attain or to work towards attaining those last words of people's thoughts about you. You now see it.
Do you find, have you talked to people who have tried that writing the eulogy exercise? Have you talked to them afterwards about how difficult it is to write what you want people to say about you?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it, and after they have enough time to recover from writing, because, and listen, if you don't get emotional, maybe you really need to start somewhere else. You really need to start with maybe you really need to maybe talk to a therapist and understand the fact that, if you're blocking these things, that if you're unable to really dig into these things on a deep level, this is an opportunity for us to be more contemplative, to be more thoughtful, where we don't have, someone chasing us, 10, 12 hours a day. We don't have deadlines. We don't have, pressures of work and of responsibility. The responsibility now is to live your life to the fullest extent that is meaningful to you. And that doesn't mean you need to replicate a 12-hour workday or an 8-hour workday. You need to curate your day based on how are you feeling? What's your energy like? How did you sleep last night? What are the things that are most important that get done? I know for me, I have a very set exercise regimen that's very important to me. But I also know that if I'm not feeling great, I'm going to modify. Okay. I'm not going to, just because I'm going to tough it through and drag myself through it. But I'm also very cognizant of the fact that there are things that I want to get done. There are things I need to get done. There are responsibilities that I've accepted that are important to me. And I look at my day as, okay, I'm going to put 2 or 3 things a day onto my calendar, but no more. I want the time that if I want to go take a walk, or I want to read, or I want to do some writing, I'm going to do that. I don't want to get to the end of the day and feel, oh my God, I need a drink because I'm exhausted. That's not, that to me is not retirement.
My husband commented recently that I spend more time in front of my computer working on things now than I did when I was working on things for my job. So, but the difference is now it's because I want to be there,
Right.
not because I have to be there.
Exactly. When I write, as I said, I write 3 blog pieces a week, and I might sit and write. I might go to a coffee shop and write 12. And I'm done for the month, pretty much. And it's like, how do I feel? I've accumulated a bunch of ideas, and now I'm going to sit and write. But I don't feel like, it's Thursday, I have to go write. I want to create a schedule that gives me the flexibility, and to make sure it's doing things that I want to do. I would rather sit and read a book than feel like forcing myself to do something I don't want to do. That's not enjoyable, or not joyful, or not meaningful to me.
That's taken a lot of time to learn, that go and do something that you enjoy instead of something you feel you need to do. You were talking about the exercise routine. I used to get up every morning and exercise before I'd go to work. And then work went away, and I don't feel like getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and exercising right now. Maybe I'll do it at 8, or maybe it'll be 2 in the afternoon.
Right. And that's all good. Right.
As long as you can train your mind to relax and accept that. And that's the big switch, is there isn't a schedule now. You've got to create a new one. Exactly.
And that's, to me, that's honoring yourself. Because when we have to do something, okay, we're going to tough it out. We're going to push through. We're going to do what we have to do. But we don't have to do that anymore. So we don't
Yeah.
have to live by an unneeded set of pressures that we had before. It's pretty simple.
So when people finish reading your book, what do you hope that they will feel or do differently?
I have great hope that they will have really looked at themselves, looked at their experience, understand their values, and give themselves, it's like give themselves. I hope that the book gives them a ladder that they can climb down off their own backs, and just live with joy, with curiosity. I have so many things that I want to do, and my biggest problem is finding the time. I had every intention of signing up for a language course at a local university because I really love languages. Not algebra, languages. So I, and then I got caught up writing this book, which I really never intended to do. But so that kind of got washed away, and I just got a notification. And I said, okay, well, I don't think it's going to happen this spring. So I've got to aim towards the summer or the fall. And I feel a little badly about it because I really want to do it, but it's like, okay, I'll do it in the fall. So, but you really want to have things that you're interested in exploring. And once you explore them, you might find out, nah, not for me. And that's okay. It's not failure. And that's the idea. That's the mindset that we need, is this growth mindset to be able to say, okay, I've learned something. I learned something that I didn't, it's like Thomas Edison, the thousand things that didn't make a light bulb. And that's okay. It's that curiosity. And we need to remain curious, because if we're so fixed in our thinking that we know everything and that there's nothing left for us to learn, there's nothing left for us to experience, that's kind of
Life
sad.
gets pretty dark.
Yeah, really dark. And that's not the world I want to live in. I have a bunch of hobbies that and things that I do that I love doing, and it gives me the greatest amount of joy. I'm a home coffee roaster, and to me, if someone says, "Oh, can I have some?" Sure, absolutely, happy to share. Someone asked me whether I would consider roasting for their coffee shop, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not looking for a business.
Yeah, then it becomes a job.
Exactly. So I could sit there and roast up a bunch of coffee, but now I'm going to have to meet your deadline. Thanks anyway.
I think that's the nicest thing about retirement is you get to do the things you want when you want.
Exactly. And you get to put the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together to make the picture you want. We've got all these little pieces here, and here, and we get to put it together and create the vision of what we want our life to look like. If you love to travel, okay, great. Go explore. What aspect of travel? My wife and I were on a trip, and we were on a cruise that went from Hamburg, Germany to Lisbon, around the Atlantic. And we were fortunate enough to meet the guest lecturer on the ship, and he was a retired diplomat. And his stories were amazing. And his lectures were even more amazing because he was able to bring the history and the culture and things together as you go look at some of these places that I've never been to before. So it's, to me, there needs to be some wonder in it. There needs to be some magic to it. I guess is the right word, is to be able to say, wow, that's amazing. beautiful. That's interesting. That's, and that to me is what life is.
Even just, wow, I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Bring something new in, and that's important.
Yeah. It changes the whole picture, right?
Yeah.
When you bring in new information or new ways of thinking about things. Yeah, we had this experience. We were in Spain and we wound up in this vermouth bar where they made, they had this homemade vermouth. I'm going, wow, this is really good. And I'm not much of a drinker. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's actually the guy who got me into roasting coffee. And he goes, oh, you like that? I go, yeah, it was really amazing. So he sends me a recipe of how to make it because he's made it. So that's my next project.
Michael, we could sit here probably all afternoon and talk about the wonderful things that retirement lets you do. But how can people find you if they want to find out more about you?
So they can find me at www.michael, Michael, middle initial F as in Frank, KAY.com. And they can find out about Chapter X community and sign up for the emails and the blogs and whatever notifications. It's all free for whoever wants to participate. And I'm happy to have people join and come to the monthly Zoom meetings or whatever and offer their opinions. Always welcome.
And you said you are primarily focused on men. Can anybody come to your Zoom meetings or just men?
Just men.
Okay.
I have
want to make that.
I have had women join, but what they did was they wanted to hear what was going on, and they kept their camera off.
Oh, that's interesting.
And yeah, but it's what I don't want to have happen is for, because men act differently around women in terms of their own self-consciousness of being judged and things like that. And because let's face it, I mean, men are not that well socialized as a rule. They might be good on the golf course or in a boardroom or whatever, doing what they do. But in terms of feeling that sense of safety and security in just talking about their situation or themselves, they're more reticent in a mixed group.
Yeah, that's understandable. So are women. You just can't be yourself the same way.
Right.
Okay. And I will make sure that there is a link to your website and a link to your podcast and probably a little blurb about your book as well.
Cool. That's awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Jackie, it was my pleasure, my honor. And as you said, we could probably talk about this all afternoon. And I am super grateful for your time and your interest and in inviting me in.
And that's it for this episode of Beyond Retirement. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Are you ready to start rocking your retirement? Head on over to www.beyondretirement.ca/rocking it and sign up to plan out your own roadmap for retirement. Don't wait till it's too late.